Oh man.
Is that good?
If someone was like watching us right now, they'd be getting very hungry, I think.
Well, it's hard to make, it's really hard to make really, really good apple pie because usually the apples are a little too soggy or they're a little too crisp, but this is like
Perfect.
this should be on one of those competition shows on TV. It is so good. It actually makes me think about a story from Jesus. And I'm sorry, but I'm just wired this way. I'm always thinking about how these things find themselves in the Bible.
Well, that's part of the beauty of our
That's
lunches,
true.
Dad.
So we have some fun. So in Mark 2, like there's this really famous story in which Jesus is having dinner, and most people are familiar with this story. So here we go. It's verse starting in verse 15. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for there were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." I love that story. I don't think they had this good of food though, probably, but.
But here he is. He's being so scandalous, as Jesus liked to do. It's one of the many things about him we can just love. He's eating with religiously unclean people, doing, hanging. Like at that time you weren't allowed to do that.
That's right. Yeah, it was outrageous, like what he was doing, and I think it shook them up. They didn't understand what was going on, and I think we understand from reading the Bible who a tax collector is. They're collaborators with the Romans. But when we say sinner, it sounds like one of those old-fashioned religious words.
Yeah.
It's actually like a technical term in the Jewish life, but it actually applied to people who maybe they couldn't afford to comply with all the religious rules, or maybe they had a business in which they traded with the Romans, or maybe they were fishermen and they were handling unclean fish. So it was actually a lot of people. And so when Jesus says this, it just really ticked these guys off big time.
Well, and, he compares the religious elite with the sick, which is pretty incredible and also very funny. And then he says he's looking for the sinners, not the religious elite.
I guess he was talking about more than the religious technical qualifications.
Yeah.
I think it's about how we view ourselves. Do we see ourselves as someone who's pretty good, has their stuff together, or do we actually recognize that we are in need of God? So he says, come for those who are healthy, who see themselves as healthy, but those who are sick. It reminds me of the other verse that we're really familiar with in John 10:10, which we probably could quote. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. And then Jesus says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full.
That's such a great analogy because when we think about heaven or we think about walking with, Yahweh in the cool of the day, what we're living now is very robbed. We have been robbed of God's fullness and what he actually intended for us, which is heartbreaking.
We look around in our culture, the fingerprints of the thief are everywhere. And even though our world's rocked by failure and corruption all over the place, lots of people actually think that through their own kind of moral goodness or even religious efforts, that they could be, they could be accepted by God. But the problem is that belief in do-it-yourself righteousness is actually disqualifying. It's stopping them from being someone that Jesus is looking for.
Yeah, it's stopping them from the flourishing, right? I mean, he wants us to flourish.
Yeah, but we can't get there unless we can actually admit that we need him, And the rest of that statement where Jesus says, he wants us to have abundant life, God wants every human to have this full life. He really wants that. That word abundant, that idea of abundant life, it connects back to this Old Testament idea of shalom or peace. And that means wholeness in every part of our life. It's also kind of the same idea we see in the Beatitudes, who is blessed, people who are the blessed people. And that's in the Sermon on the Mount. He wants us to become everything that he created us to be. He wants us to really be all he made us for.
And the Sermon on the Mount, right? He was really reaching beyond kind of traditional, safe religious crowds. He was talking to the people that weren't typically addressed and saying, you can and do have the good life.
Yeah. I mean, and this idea that you would offer that, the good life, the holy life, the blessed life, you would offer that to anybody on the outside, that was like scandalous. And, you know, it has a lot to do with what it means to make our business, this outpost of heaven, a place where relationships and experience with God can happen for people.
I mean, it poses a question, one that I absolutely feel challenged by, which is, shouldn't we be extending that experience to people who don't think like us, look like us, people that feel that can't offer us value, people that are on the outskirts, like isn't that part of our job as Kingdom Outposts?
Yeah. The best way, I like to draw a picture for this using my amazing art skills. Grab
You have new napkins.
Hey,
Here's your red pen.
let's read another napkin. So part of what's going on here, I think, is we view God's work kind of like this. So here's Jesus in the middle. You're going to see how bad of an artist I am. Here's Jesus in the middle. And here's all the people. Are these great stick figures? Here's all the people that are the insiders. These are the people that are part of the club. They're the ones who are accepted, right? These are the ones who belong. And then out here are the people who haven't. They haven't become Christians yet. And so they're outside. So we view the world kind of as this inside and outside, kind of a membership way of looking at things.
Well, and this is very much the religious elite at the table, and then the outsiders who don't belong.
It looks like a table, right? Like the round table, King Arthur. Yeah. That's how good my art is. But I think this is actually how Jesus wants us to see it. So here's Jesus. And so what's really going on is that there's people, a whole world of them, and some of them are headed toward him, and some of them are headed away from him. And so it's not so much whether we're in the club or out of the club. It's really about which direction are we going? Are we headed toward Jesus, or are we headed away? I think that, and discipleship actually starts the moment we begin to move toward him.
Not to say there isn't, there is I mean, we are at some point have salvation.
Yeah.
Whether that's a single point or whether that's a journey. But you know, what's interesting here is this is the prodigal son.
Yeah.
This is the son doing a 180.
Yeah.
Coming back to the father.
Yeah. So that prodigal son, he, you know, here's my beautiful drawing. So the prodigal son, he goes out there in the pig pen, and at some moment in his heart, he goes, this is not for me, right? And he remembers, he has this conception of what his father's house was like, and then his heart turns. That moment in which his heart turns, that's the moment in which the opportunity for someone to come alongside of him, the journey with him, is happening. And that's when discipleship could actually start. And somewhere in the journey, and we don't know, I mean, there is a bright line between when we have extended faith to Jesus and when we haven't, but like, we're not in a position to know that. Just because someone says they did, or they say a prayer, doesn't mean that faith moment has happened for them. So our job really is to see them not as inners and outers, or members and non-members, or those on the inside and outside, but to see people on journeys toward him.
So the very people that our culture has set aside is who Jesus came for.
Yeah.
And we are called to do the same.
That's right. And so a lot of the people are not the ones that are the tax collectors and sinners that we maybe should be having dinner with, right? They're the people that you would not expect would be his. And they might be like low-class fishermen who smell like fish, who they trade with the Romans because they sell fish oil, and, you know, to the Romans, fish sauce they actually sold. Or maybe it's Mary Magdalene. She had like 7 demons, you know, and she was morally corrupt.
Yeah.
So these are the people that he came for.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about the makeup of Jesus' disciples. We have Simon the Zealot, who's essentially a hitman.
Yep.
We have Matthew, the tax collector, who's hanging out with the Romans, the very people that Jesus supposedly came to overthrow.
Yeah. And yet, like our position in the marketplace, it puts us in a location in proximity to all kinds of people that we can start discipling before they even know they want to be discipled, to pastor them before they need to be, they know they want to pastor.
Yeah.
Because those heart moments are happening in their lives in which someone needs to be there to help them find Jesus.
Reminds me of what Jesus said, freely we receive and so freely we give.
Yeah. And that's the big opportunity, right? Realizing with humility how much Jesus has done for us in redeeming us out of our brokenness, taking away guilt, taking away shame, and giving us this intimacy with him. And once we've done that, we can begin to look around and see others in our life, in our circle, in our business that are in that place too, or maybe they've just begun to turn their heart. And they're maybe not on the inside, right? Maybe they're still a long way off, but their hearts are coming toward him, and they just need somebody who will notice them. So I think like for me, I have to stop on a regular basis and just ask the Holy Spirit to show me people in my life, in my business, in my work, that are at that moment in which they need someone to come alongside and join them on their journey to Jesus.